Hi there, Scorpio. Thank you for joining me for your year 2016 forecast. As this year begins, there is an emphasis on your communications as there were last year, but I think the electrifying energy which has dominated your chart over the last few years and perhaps has meant there's been lots of tension and potentially nervous tension, which has led to headaches and migraines and stress illnesses even. Well, there is fantastic news there, because the influence which has been really affecting this and affecting us all in the world has been a square between your co-ruler Pluto and Uranus, the planet of rebelliousness. And those two have been agitating against each other for 3 or 4 years. Now, they are still going to be in conflict in the first 3 months of this year, but then it comes to a close, and it's not going to be coming back in these zodiac signs for many, many years. So it's something we can all really celebrate. But for you, Uranus is going to continue to ask you this year to be open to new approaches, to be flexible, especially around work, and Pluto is still going to make you very passionate about your communications, your ideas, but the two are just going to be grating each other a lot less, pretty well from April onwards. But at the start of this year, Saturn, the planet of structure, has moved out of your sign, where it briefly revisited for 4 months last year, and now it's going to be in Sagittarius for the next couple of years. But the great news for you is that Venus, the planet of love and affection, is in Sagittarius as this new year begins. And I think this can lead to an improvement in your financial circumstances, or someone could be very supportive, very helpful in a practical way. You may be on the end of someone's huge generosity, or it can lead to just an enjoyment of the good and natural things in life. But Venus in the second solar house as you begin a new year is something really quite nice to savour, and it's going to take the edge off the more limiting energy that Saturn can permeate. Saturn is also going to be forging a very fine link with the Sun as this year begins, a semi-sextile. This can really help you to articulate your ideas in a way which can build up the physical foundations of your world, either in terms of feeling better about your self-value or in terms of building up your bank balance. But of course, Saturn is never a stroll in the proverbial park, and it's going to be in this location for the next couple of years, teaching you about the things that are really important in life, and they're not necessarily material ones. We can all sometimes think those are the key things, but the more spiritual dynamic is also going to be very important from Saturn's influence. But what really makes your second solar house come ablaze, come alive this year, is the fact that your other co-ruler of Mars is going to be tracking his way through this sector for 5 months. And this is going to give you a sharper pair of elbows when it comes to improving your lot. And it can make you more entrepreneurial. It can make you more aware of the bottom line in any situation, whether it's how much you pay for your utilities, or how much you feel your talents are worth when you're exchanging them off an employer or anyone you work on a contracted basis for. And it can also make you a little bit more aggressive about trying to improve your lot. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but Saturn, remember, is the handbrake and Mars is the throttle. So if the two start to aggravate each other and we're not getting all we want, it can create huge frustration. And that meeting point together occurs in August for you. However, let's go back to the start of the year. So last year, the Sun was very much caught up in this squabble between Uranus and Pluto. It's not this year. It's actually forging that fine link with Saturn. But also Mercury, the planet of communication, is in a very sharp-eyed part of your scope, but only for a day. It's then going to be relocating into your sector of home and family. And that's an area that's going to be particularly important early this year, because a lot of conversations can occur and some revelations can come to the surface which could surprise you. And there may be some things that you thought you knew about or understood in a particular way, but you may find yourself rethinking some key emotional ideas. And there may be times in January particularly when you may find yourself feeling a bit muted and perhaps even a little bit low if something comes out that you're not expecting, but try to take it in your stride. The planet of optimism, Jupiter, is also going to be going into retrograde in the month, but Mars is actually forging a fantastic trine this month with Neptune, suggesting that compassion and understanding that we've all got different challenges in life, and to be less judgmental can be a good thing for you to take into this early part of the year. Now, Jupiter for you does remain in a very sociable area right through to the 8th of September, but it is going to be going backwards through to the 8th of May. So if you are wanting to expand your social circle, just be sure that you're not putting too much faith, too much confidence in a group of people that you don't actually know very well. And certainly when it comes to your long-term planning, don't promise more than you can realistically deliver. That could just see you having to backtrack and be a little bit embarrassed about big plans that you've announced actually aren't going to work out because you're actually going to head in a different direction. But what's key is that Mars then moves into Sagittarius at the start of March, and that's going to make you give you that added determination, because at the start of the year Mars is in your sign, which could lead to a fever or a cold or two in the first 6 weeks of this year, but it's also going to see you very goal orientated. But by the time he moves into Sagittarius, you're wanting to see results, but those results are not necessarily going to come overnight, and that's where it's continuing to be very goal orientated, but understanding that it's application and persistence that are going to be the key. You won't necessarily see what you want straight away. But the solar eclipse, which occurs in Pisces on the 9th, is actually very good for you, because it's going to help you to be much more self-expressive in the following 6 months. What's more challenging is the lunar eclipse, which occurs on the 23rd. That's in a murky emotional area, which is to do with secrets, fears and anxieties. So as much as you may want to demonstrate to people how talented you are, just be aware of some of your motivations, or the motives of anyone else you get closely involved with, particularly if it's in a romantic context, Scorpio. However, Mars is going to be chomping its stuff, powering you forwards for 3 months from March, but it does in June and July go back into your sign. This is where you may have to rethink something that you thought was heading in the right direction, may not quite work out right. You may recalibrate your plans and go again. And then the testing point, as I said before, in terms of the financial success of it anyway, could be in August. It could also be a bit of a quarrel in August, but particularly over a financial issue or a point of principle. But Jupiter, of course, is going forwards by then, but what's going to be particularly affecting us all is a very tricky square between Neptune and Saturn, which lasts from the end of May through to October. Now, this aspect developed at the end of 2015. In fact, it really peaked at the end of November and was in a background influence all throughout December. Neptune for you over the last few years has been terrific in terms of you embracing your imagination, whether it's romantic or spiritual or creative. But Neptune also alters reality. It disturbs things. It's a very oblique influence. It's gas, if we like, isn't it? It's not something that's so tangible. Whereas Saturn, which is begins to grate against, is all about the physical, the side of life that is more tangible. So if you come up with an idea, for example, to try and make some money, which is quite dreamy and different, well, you're not going to get the money for it if you go to the bank manager and they look at your business plan straight away and see an obvious fault. So you have to be very realistic. But this particularly difficult aspect can also affect your relationships, particularly a romantic relationship, or even with a sibling or an offspring, because your values and their values may not mesh together in the way you or they hope. A little bit of unreality can be washing around, which could be very depleting if you don't really get to grips with it. However, in September, there is a fantastic solar eclipse on the first day, which is really pushing you to be as friendly and outgoing as possible. Sometimes you can be a little bit suspicious of other people's motives. It's all part of being a Scorpio, but this particular new moon and solar eclipse is really asking you to have the maximum faith in other people, and that faith can be rewarded. And there is then the move of Jupiter. Jupiter moves into a more spiritual area for you on the 9th of September. So the last quarter of this year may see you thinking about life, people, and even existence in a quite different way. The goal-orientated, rather tangible drive of earlier in the year could make way for a little bit more of a spiritual awareness in terms of values. I think that's going to be a big change as the last quarter of this year unfolds. But having said that, Mars does burst its way into Capricorn in October, but goes across the other co-ruler of your sign, Pluto. So there could be a big discussion you're going to have in October, a very big discussion. It could see you having to really stand your ground against someone who's quite ruthless or unfair, or at the same time, perhaps you're going to be needing to be much more aware of your motives. But either way, the gloves will be off and people will know that what's said is what's really meant. But it could be a monumental struggle, but it may lead to a breakthrough. Just be aware of that in October. You then have Mars switching into the sign of Aquarius, which is an influence that can see you busy around the home, making changes, doing some renovations, moving altogether, downsizing, upsizing, whatever you need to do. That's certainly possible as we get through to the end of the year. But then Mars transfers over to your sister water sign of Pisces, and it's going to be merging itself with Neptune right as the year comes to a close. I think your New Year's Eve celebrations are likely to be lubricated with a certain amount of the goodies of life, let's put it that way. But when it comes to your love life, this could be very hot, very passionate, but also see you in a clinch with someone that you'll never see again. So if you're looking for a long-term relationship, as this year comes to a close and someone excites you, just be aware of what they're saying may not be very true. Also, if someone tries to offer you some kind of get-rich-quick scheme and wants some money off you, turn them down flat as the curtain comes down on this year. But it is a year that can be truly significant for you in terms of getting to grips with what's really important to you, the individual. No two Scorpios are going to be exactly the same. It could be intimacy is your key. It could be spirituality. It could be dirty loot. You want a lot more of it. Whatever your value system is, you're going to be much clearer by the end of this year than at the start of it. But you've got to be realistic about the impact of your hopes and expectations, which can be quite romantic at times and not actually dovetail very much with this real surge of realism that's going to be pushing its way into your consciousness this year. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you for joining me. Good luck and goodbye for now.